Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wired Nerdy podcast. We are on episode number 14. We're rounding out the end of another week here. Doug, how are you doing? I am Keith. As I mentioned, this is my good friend Doug. How's it treating you, buddy?
Good. Weather's great outside. Get to do a little mowing, a little yard work. Also, a lot of articles to research. So,
Oh,
been a
yeah.
good week.
We've got some pretty good stuff here for the nerd news this week. Early on in the week, we always try to cast a net to collect what's going on. And I thought, it's kind of slow. And then it's like weird. It's like more toward like the middle to the end of the week. It's like, boom, a bunch of stuff popped out. So it's always fun when that happens.
Yeah, same for me. I'm looking. I'm like, man, I don't think we'll have anything. And then all of a sudden, it's boom, got a lot of news to
I
talk
know.
about. So,
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool
yeah,
stuff though. And I love it because you keep even with all the news and the things that I check out, you always catch things that I miss. And it's kind of cool because when you put it out there, I'm like, oh wow, so it's kind of cool. I always learn something.
yeah.
One of the byproducts of this. So all right, let's cue up the nerd news and get on into it.
Nerd News.
All right, so I'm gonna go first here. It would not be, and we say this every single episode, a 2023 podcast if it wasn't for the mention of artificial intelligence. So, what's the latest in this crazy fast break neck scenario that's going on with AI? So, this week, somebody who is known as the godfather of artificial intelligence resigned from Google and he essentially quit and he expressed that he regrets and fears about his life's work in artificial intelligence.
Oh
This
man.
is Jeffrey Hinton is his name. He actually won a Nobel Peace Prize for computing, and he's known as a trailblazer when it comes to what are neural networks. And now he's free to speak out. Essentially, through Twitter post, he pointed out that he essentially left out of concern and he wants to become vocal about the dangers of AI. And it's kind of interesting because when you read up on this, he points out about the accelerated pace at which things are going, us not fully have an understanding about how it's developing. It's kind of a black box with what OpenAI and what Google are doing. Um, and it's very, very interesting. And one of these quotes are, I console myself with the normal excuse of, if I hadn't done it, somebody else would have, said Hinton, who has been employed by Google for over a decade. He says, it is hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it for bad things. Now, this lends itself to a growing sentiment of a lot of AI researchers are starting to push for putting a pause on AI development until we can understand just exactly what's going on with it. But the fact that this guy did it, it's a big deal. Doug, what do you think about this? This is a reoccurring thing with AI in this year alone, just since we've been covering the news. Obviously, a lot of developments. Like, what are your thoughts on this latest thing? What's your first thing when you see that?
It really kind of scares me because we had a story a couple of weeks ago of like Elon Musk and all these industry leaders saying, "Whoa, we need to pause AI. We need to slow down and catch up with some safety issues and stuff." So this is just another thing in my mind of the founder of AI saying, "Look, this stuff's a little scary. We need to slow down. It's getting too advanced." At least that's the way I take it when I read it.
Yeah, and Musk specifically has been warning about AI way before we had these developments with ChatGPT 4.0. That's
Mhm.
really been the one that's gotten everybody's attention. So I think what's really starting to accelerate this is not only did 4.0 come out, it's very impressive. Uh, it's interesting because then you have the investment of Microsoft. They integrated it with Bing. And so you now have these tech companies starting to invest heavily into GPT and that's starting to expand it. Of course, a lot of it is there's some AI researchers that kind of dismiss it and they're like, you know what? It's not really that smart. It's just a great big plagiarism machine. All it does is it got trained on a bunch of internet data and it just is really good at regurgitating it and putting words in different orders. So some people are like demeaning it. Others are like, no, no, no. Now I would dare
Yeah.
say this guy quitting, especially it being his life's work, and him throwing up the red flags, I think this lends credibility to legitimate fears about where this is going, companies not knowing what's going on with it, and it being used responsibly.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, he is inside the industry. He's seeing all the back end work and all that. Something has scared him enough or cautioned him enough to say, I'm out. This isn't for me.
It does make you wonder, what has he seen that, we know
Yeah,
what's been made public, right? Um, Maybe
there's
there's more
always
to it,
something behind closed doors that's scary.
especially with military, right?
Yes.
There always is. So,
Uh,
yeah.
Kind of in line with this, I watched a special on 60 Minutes. I mean, it aired in February, but I just watched it on YouTube about our nuclear arsenal.
Mhm.
They are still using, and correct me if I'm wrong, the big floppy disk, not the little 3.5s, but
Five and
the
a quarter.
huge. They're still using those for the nuclear launch silos, and that way hackers and stuff don't get in. My worry is Matthew Broderick and the whole
War games.
war
Want to
games. Yep,
want to play a game?
right. That's my worry about AI. And you look at pop culture and all that. I mean,
Skynet.
Terminator, all that. That's really
I
cool
know.
movies. But are we getting close to that?
Well, it's interesting because science fiction is really living in this age, and what we're starting to see. A lot of the things that you see in science fiction may not be exact, but it is coming to fruition.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of science fiction is based on actual science, and yeah, you're right. If you remember, Skynet, I believe, used her own nukes against us in the
Yeah.
fictional for Terminator. Yeah, the majority of, from my understanding, of the United States nuclear, what do you want to call it, network?
Arsenal or, yeah.
Yeah, arsenal. It's air gapped, meaning that
Yeah.
it is not connected to a mainline system. That's very good. A lot of nuclear plants are that way. That's very good. A lot of people don't understand that. The concern being is that if there is ever any type of connectivity to those kinds of things, and that's where you get into trouble. I
Hmm.
did read something very interesting in that it is causing organizations and industries to be very creative. For example, the universities have been very, very concerned about plagiarism, people writing papers, and they're already starting to see
Definitely.
it because ChatGTP is free right now, and so is Bing for that matter. But what's interesting is that I read an article. We're talking 1930s, 1940s. It was very common in the university system to give exams through oral presentation. Well, after a lot of, I guess, discussion, many, many universities are going to go back to oral examinations.
Yeah.
So you're no longer writing it down on paper. You have to be present or on a phone call, like, with a video. And you have to essentially, you'll get quizzed verbally by your professor. That way they know you're not cheating. Same
Yeah.
thing for essays, writing papers. Instead of writing it down, all the composition aspect, now it's going to be in person. It's fascinating that an old school method of test taking is what's going to remedy, they view, the rise of AI and plagiarism. I thought that's a fascinating little story twist there to me. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's
And
all going
following,
interesting ways, though.
yeah, absolutely. Following along the lines of that, if you get this Chat GPT on your smartwatch, I mean, what's to say a teacher can't see you using your smartwatch to answer every single question on your test?
Yeah, that's very true. They could. I know
So,
when you take certification test, there is software now that you have to take your camera and spin around your room and show a proctor, a person on the other side your room. You have to take
oh,
off all jewelry, show your hands, that kind of a thing. So, th- you know, those are elements that they do have in play to try to prevent people from cheating, but it's now something that they didn't have to be mindful of before, and so it's fascinating. And to that point, now that's pretty mild cheating on test, right? But what just Jeffrey guy is saying is that he's worried ultimately about, while the good that could come from AI, he's very concerned about how in the world do you prevent bad actors from using it
yeah.
in an inappropriate way. I think that's ultimately his concern, and there's not enough measures, preventative measures in place in order to control it. And then you couple on top of that us not fully understanding how it's developing the way that it is and that sort of
Mm,
thing. So
yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how this stuff continues to play out. I'm sure these types of headlines are not going to go away. It seems like every single week there's some kind of a
Yeah.
new thing with it. So all right, let's move on to the next one because I know you're itching to talk about it, man. You bring
I
it up just
know.
about every podcast. Take it away, buddy.
I know I've been bugging you a lot with this, and I'll go ahead and say it's probably out of my price range, but uh, yesterday,
Probably.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll talk about that too. But yesterday, Google did a release of their new Pixel Fold. So this is a foldable device. Some people may know that Samsung has got some pretty successful foldable phones out there. Essentially, for our audio listeners, if you're not looking at the image we may throw up here, it's basically two phones that unfold to make a kind of a tablet. That's an easy explanation.
It
But
is.
yesterday they used the "May the force be with you," but instead they say "May the fold be with you." Kind of a play on words for the holiday yesterday.
Yeah. It's been
Um,
very, very anticipated.
yes. You see all these rumors and these leaks, but I'm kind of excited. The keynote address is next Wednesday, the 10th.
Yep.
So I'll definitely be waking up, work midnights, but I'm waking up early to watch that and get all that tech nerdiness going in.
Yeah. What's super cool about this is that Microsoft had the Surface Duo, which was two screens and it opened up in a clamshell, but they were two separate screens, where this is one foldable screen. So you don't have a bezel down the middle. I know there are other phone models that have been like this. However, this being a Google phone, it's going to be a little bit nicer. Specifically, spec wise, it's
Mhm.
marked to include what's called the Tensor G2 chipset. If you aren't aware, when it comes to phones, that is a very, very nice processor. It's very fast. 12 gigs of RAM. Storage wise, 256 gigs of storage, a 64 megapixel triple camera array in the back. And it's supposed to be an IP rating for water resistance, not waterproof.
Mhm.
And it also comes with that hefty price tag of $1,800. Now, keep in
Yeah.
mind, Apple phones, Android phones, easy $1,000 if you do, like, I know if you do the iPhone Maxes, you're gonna drop anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200.
Yeah.
I really thought that this phone would be in that range. I'm kind of shocked it's above 1,500
Mhm.
because it's common, you know. I mean, for like what we have, you know, here, like these things can do anywhere from 800 to 1,200. They went well above that, and I think they're
Yeah.
banking on the Google name and they're banking on that foldable. So, what are your thoughts on that price? What were you thinking it was going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 1,500 to 1,900. The 18 kinda they're shooting a gap, split in the middle. But looking at the video that they released, this is not a, like, sketch, this isn't somebody's rendering, this is from Google. It looks gorgeous. I mean, the hardware outside looks awesome. There is what they call, I think, a chin or a little black ring around the screen. I'm not calling it the right thing. It's not, screen to edge of the, device, but
Oh,
I think
edge to
they're okay
edge.
with that. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the folding mechanism looks good.
Yeah, it looks pretty sweet actually. It does look like a very, very nice phone. I'm impressed with the processor they're putting into it. It'll be interesting to see what are the specs in way of battery life, because there are other things that you got to take into account. Battery life, its antenna signal strength,
Mhm.
whether it's going to have Wi-Fi 6, which is really a standard now. It should be,
Yeah,
which is the faster Wi-Fi standard. All of those elements kind of come into play. And then, of course, being Android, is there going to be kind of any storage expansion? I know some Android phones you can put in, you know, a micro SD card.
yeah.
There's variants. They may have skimped on some of that though, but with that price point, ooh, it's pretty
Yeah, I
high.
would love to get one, but I'm probably just gonna look at it from afar, so,
Yeah. Well, eventually the price will go down,
yeah.
or other models will come out. You know, it's inevitable. So that's the good news about it.
Well, and that brings up a good question is, what are your thoughts? Is this just expensive because it's brand new technology, or essentially you are getting kind of 2 phones linked together with a hinge in the middle?
Well, it's not the first foldable by any
Yeah.
means. Folding has been around for a while. My thing is, I think Google has a really good brand name, and I
Mhm.
think that they're capitalizing on the expense of just trying to get as much profit as they can. We all know it does not cost $1,800 to make
No.
this phone,
Yeah.
so I'd be interested in what their margins are. But I think they're just, it's brand is that's my
Mhm.
opinion. I
Yeah.
don't think the tech is really that expensive, because there are other devices that have the Tensor 2 chip in it. There's been other devices that have folding. It'll be real interesting to see what the specs are when people start testing it out. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe it's got some, super fast read write capabilities that phones don't have. And maybe there's some way they're going to justify the $1,800. I'm not seeing it right now. We'll find out on May 10th whenever they have their announcement. And I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll talk more about it then. Which is funny. You had put in our notes a question, which I thought was a really good one, right underneath this article. I'm going to go ahead and let you ask that. Let's dive into that because it's kind of tied to this.
Yeah. Will Apple release a foldable? And I say that if Apple releases a foldable, and I've given them compliments before, their hardware is so nice. Like, look at my wife's phone, just the case of the phone, the metal, and she has some plastic on there, but their build quality for each phone seems just so premium that their foldable coming out may just be this amazing device.
They might. I think they're probably going to wait and see how this Google device does. Because Google, as far as brand wise, because there's just tons of Androids out there, Google's probably the one that goes toe to toe with them most on
Mhm.
quality and that sort of thing. Most people don't realize that as good as Apple is, Android rules the world in way of phones globally. 90%, and don't quote me on that, it's pretty high of the market share is Android based. And
Mhm.
a lot of that is because a lot of countries that have a higher population, especially in Asian continental areas, they're very big on having unregion locks. So the idea behind that is that they want freedom to not be locked into a certain region, so they can buy in cell phones and uh, be in different market spaces.
Mm.
So Android is really more prevalent as an operating system and a device type globally than Apple is. However, Apple has that very unique custom build quality. They stay inside their own ecosystem. They do what they do very well because they don't have to account for all the different variances on specs and that sort of thing. But if Apple were to do it, it would be done well. I have
Yeah,
no doubts about that. It'll
I
just
agree.
be interesting. I think they're going to wait and see how this particular phone does in the market space to see if there's a demand for it. Right now, most of the rumors are about them kind of dipping their toe maybe into VR, like we talked about before. So they may have other focuses at this point, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, and to kind of wrap up the keynote address, I know they're supposed to release a tablet, and then kind of an A line, like a 7A line. It's kind of a not subpar, but it's got lesser speed and lesser stuff than their 7 and 7 Pro. So it'll be interesting to look at those. This will be Google's first tablet since like the Pixel Slate or something a
It's
couple
been
of
a
years
while.
ago. Yeah.
And that tablet market space for Android has been dominated by Samsung with the Galaxy,
Yes.
which is
And
an
I've got one.
impeccable
Yeah.
device. Oh, its build quality is great. Samsung, they've
Yeah.
done really well in the tablet space with those Galaxies. They got good hardware. Samsung's
Yeah.
usually nipping at the heels of Google on some of these things.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds for next week. So yeah,
Yeah. So I'll kind of wrap this little section up with phone leaks and tech leaks and other. Do you think, I personally think, that these companies stage these leaks on purpose to get their items out in the market? Or do you think that it is generally just an accident?
I think it's a good question. And yeah, I do think that they have some accidental leaks. I think it is a mixture of both. But I think some of them are purposeful. I think they're it's purposeful for marketing to get the buzz going. This is particularly true. Notice the leaks always seem to conveniently happen a week or a month right before that individual company's showcase.
Yeah,
Apple's
absolutely.
known to be doing stuff in a set month, and then all of a sudden you start seeing the buzz around it. I don't think that's completely coincidental.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a mix of both. I do think they have real leaks, but I'm going to go on a limb and say most of them are probably marketing,
Yeah.
done.
Mhm.
That's my take. Sound like a
So I don't
conspiracy theorist, but yeah, that's my that's
no,
my thing.
I agree. I don't have specific examples in front of me. I was going to research that, but I know iPhones have been left on subways and buses. Same with Pixels; they've been openly photographed in
Sure.
cafes and bars and stuff. So,
It's the factories oftentimes. There will
yes,
be, and
that too.
yeah, that's I know that's gotten Apple a few times where they'll obviously they got to start manufacturing the models ahead of time in order to meet the demand. Well, oftentimes out of Foxconn, who makes the majority of the Apple phones for assembly wise, leaks will come out of those factories.
Hmm.
People will take pictures of them, that sort of thing. That happens too. So
Yeah.
those are those ones I think that are legit leaks, and then there are the ones that are not. So,
Cool.
all right, next one. This is an interesting one for all of our gaming listeners out there. Finally, uh, an executive, Phil Spencer at Microsoft, went on a podcast, on the Kind of Funny podcast. It's a big podcast in gaming, and he was interviewed, and he admitted that Xbox, specifically the Xbox One generation, lost the console wars. Now, what's interesting is he goes on to declare that they don't view it as, they're no longer in competition in the console space with Sony for the PlayStation or with Nintendo for the Switch. And it's interesting. He expands upon that, and what he says is that they misstepped. He said, and I agree with him. He said by losing the Xbox One console war, they lost going forward. And the reason being is it was right around that time. And we just had this conversation
Yeah.
where digital games from stores like Steam, for example, or the PlayStation Store, or, Xbox Game Pass, those kinds of things. Digital games is what kind of came to play. Why that's a big deal is because once people get invested, if you own a Switch, a Nintendo Switch, and you buy tons of digital games, not physical, digital, they stay with you. That means you're more likely in that ecosystem, you're going to buy the next Nintendo so you can play the games you've already bought digitally.
Yeah.
That had never happened before. And his comment was, by us losing that generation, no longer is it true that you're going to have people swear off and jump from one console to another. And he said that was a huge misstep on their part. So they're changing up their tactics. They don't view themselves as, uh, you know, going directly against Sony anymore. I completely agree with him. It also falls in line with what we were talking about with how the Xbox really does seem to parallel the PC.
Hmm.
And, so you just kind of reaffirmed to me that they're definitely self-aware of what happened in that space. And it was funny, he made the comment because he said, gone are the days are exclusives causing them to win a console war, meaning people leaving their consoles. He's like, most people own multiple consoles. He said, if Starfield, which we talked about a lot, it's
Yeah.
like Skyrim in space. If Starfield by Bethesda is supposed to come out in the fall, we'll see. If it comes out, and even if it's like an 11 out of 10, like the best game ever made, he's like, it's not going to make them win a console war. People are not going to abandon their PlayStations to then, I'm swearing off PlayStation, I'm now an Xbox person. They're not going to do that. And I think he's right. So it was fascinating. So I thought it was interesting because what we've talked about. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, the transition from physical media to digital media, I'm sure is hurting people. And then the console exclusives. Like The Last of Us was a PS4 thing, but now it's on Steam and it's on.
PC? Yeah.
So it's slowly going to other areas. And I think the gamers are realizing, why am I buying such expensive hardware when they're going to release to multiple platforms eventually?
Well, and what's not helping is the price of games, even digitally. There's
Oh,
like
yes.
$70 and $80 now. And a lot of people are like
And I have
starting to
an
wake up.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I read an article that the gaming industry is starting to wake up since they did the price hike for this generation. Game
Mhm.
sales are down.
Yeah.
So them increasing the price to 70 and $80 is actually not helping. So that's also another factor
Yeah.
industry wise.
Well, and you got to think, and maybe I'm wrong, but the cost of sharing it on a digital server for download should be way cheaper than physical media and
Way less
cases
overhead.
and employees and factories to
Yeah.
do all that.
But they're not passing that on, that cost savings on. You're right. It's
Yeah.
way less overhead.
Yeah.
But it's kind of,
It's interesting.
yeah, there's a reason why the Steam summer sales are so huge.
Yeah. Oh, I
So,
love them.
oh,
They,
because
they get me in trouble a lot, but that's okay.
yeah, but you can get some awesome games you've been eyeing that are normally $20 for like $5. That,
Yeah.
but that's it. Again, there's not much overhead, and it's a good way to kind of push the product. And I think it's only a matter of time. Sony's been doing sales like that for a while, and the discounts are about up to 75%. Now, it's not as prevalent as Steam, but Sony has really on their digital store. If you're not a part of their subscription service, they give you some pretty deep discounts, and you can catch it kind of like the Steam sales as well.
Oh,
So they're
cool.
starting to get into that. Nintendo a little bit, but they've never been known for sales. They think a lot of their Mario stuff.
Yeah.
Like, no, it was, you know this amount of money. The
Yeah.
most will Mario's been out for 3 years. It'll be
Right.
$40 at Walmart still. you know,
I think they have a cult following, and that's an
they know it.
acceptable thing.
I
They
know.
know that
They
it's
know.
Nintendo, it's
That's
Mario.
right.
Yeah.
That's true. It's the brand. It's
Yeah.
how it works. So, all right, brother, you take on the next one.
Yep. So, looking at our agenda here, I'm kind of going to skip down because we're talking about consoles and gaming and stuff. GTA 6. It's Grand Theft Auto 6. For those who don't know, and for those who don't know, it's kind of you play as a criminal, and there's a really good storyline. There has been all the way since the very beginning. But GTA 6 is supposedly going to release on May 17th. And,
Well, it's not going to release. It's
sorry.
a
Yes.
release announcement. I want to be clear about that. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. You're
So
gonna get a lot of people really excited.
I know, dang it. They're like, "What? It's releasing?" So, thank you for catching me. It's gonna be announced possibly on the 17th, and this is interesting because GTA 5 has been going strong for over a decade. Some of the statistics I've read are $7 billion in revenue, but I think mostly from their online because 'cause they've
It's
released
huge.
so many things
Oh
for
yeah.
their online gaming, and then, 3 generations of consoles starting with the Xbox 360.
Yep.
So that's amazing to jump one game, 3 generations of consoles, and it just keeps getting bought over and over and over.
Yep. It's one of those franchises that people keep buying. What's interesting about that is that Rockstar, who's the developer, a lot like Bethesda, they got to be careful because when you have such a monumental hit, you don't want to rush the
Mhm.
next one because the
Yep,
bar is so high.
yep,
And so it'll be interesting. This announcement on May 17th will be the first time that they've hinted at any type of a timeline. And who knows, they may even say, oh, yeah, we're shooting for 2026. It may still be out a ways. There have been a lot of speculation about whether or not they're going to abandon their game engine in favor of Unreal 5. There's been a
that
lot.
would be
So
crazy.
it'll be interesting. And a lot of people have done
Yeah,
mods with this existing one that they have in it. Of course, it looks incredibly real, which is crazy. So man, if they've got a long-standing history of getting in trouble for violence and great storylines, but man, yeah, it's
yeah,
what you can do in those games is nuts. I can't imagine it looking like that game that we were talking about, last week with the body cam footage. I mean, that may be a bridge too far. It'd be interesting to see how that's going to be
yeah.
received by the public.
Yeah, and I'll wrap this up, but, GTA 6 has always been violent, but I think what draws people in is just the immersiveness, if you can mod it, I know GTA 4 and 5 even, people are doing, like, live PD with cop
I've seen that.
cars, they're
They do role
running.
playing. They do role play
Yeah,
with it.
mhm.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a trucker sim in there, you can haul goods throughout, San Andreas and all the locations. So, GTA 6 does have some really big shoes to fill.
It does. It really, really does. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully they take their time with it. I didn't put it in there as a note, but there was a game that was released by Arcane Studios this week called Redfall. It has fallen on its face.
Oh, man.
Tons of technical problems and glitches. Going back to Phil Spencer, the head of the Microsoft studio, he actually said that that was an actual exclusive, Microsoft exclusive,
Mm,
and it's not done well. And
yeah,
he cited that he blames himself because Microsoft should have gotten involved, help that studio make it better, but it wasn't ready and it got released too early. So hopefully we don't see that with GTA.
hopefully not.
I don't think we will. Rockstar's pretty
Uh,
good about holding on to things.
yeah, that brings up our conversation, and I know we've talked. Did this studio rush to get this out too quickly? I mean, because now they're gonna have to issue some patches and some, upgrades and stuff, so it might be interesting to say, "Did you guys rush too much? Should you have held it a little longer?" And tell your fans, "Hey, we're not quite ready. We wanna make this good for you day one."
Yeah, and that happens. I mean, that happened
Because you've been
recently.
having some issues too with the new Jedi game.
Little bit. It's been predominantly so the new Jedi Survivor game, by the way, it is impeccable. So the game is just
It looks
so
amazing.
the story's good. It's so good. So none of the things that I've experienced on the PlayStation 5 have gotten in the way of me enjoying it. It's been
Oh,
little
good.
things like the textures will have a load
Performance
delay.
issues.
Yeah, every
Yeah.
now and then it kind of like stutters. But if I just close out of the game, go back into it new each time, it's good. The biggest problem has been on the PC.
Oh,
and they are releasing a patch, if not already. I was just reading about to try to address this, but it is an example of being rushed too soon. Now the PC's hard because, for consoles, what the hardware is, and it's easy for you to tweak it. With PCs, you've got a wide spectrum of hardware specs. You have one
yeah,
person who may only have 8 gigs of RAM and another person who has 32 gigs of RAM. All these variants, it's so hard to tweak a game on that many variances,
yeah.
unless you designed it or developed it with that wide scale in mind, like designed it for PC. So, we're seeing this so often. So, yes, it's exciting to talk about these games, but whenever there's a trend of them not being very good when they come out, that really kind of bums people out. So, it's a
Hmm.
balancing act, right? All
Definitely.
things in life are about balance. So, all right, I'll take the next one. It's a weird one, and I had just caught it today. Fox they have a new TV show. They're sending a bizarre collection of celebrities to a fake Mars for a new reality show. So the premise behind this is, and I'll make sure I put the picture up. Uh, they've got this picture of Lance Armstrong, Ronda Rousey, who's an MMA fighter, also in the WWE. The guy that he was McLovin from Superbad, you
Yeah.
know. So they're taking these actors and they're putting them and artists, musical artists, rappers, NFL players, all these kinds. They're putting them in a fictional scenario where they pretend like they're on Mars and they have to live together.
It-
Uh, Wow.
uh, yeah. I mean, there's some reality TV junkies that are just gonna love it.
I guess so, and it's what's really hilarious. They're really leaning into it because it says, meanwhile, William Shatner, who of course played Captain Kirk, will play the role of Mission Control. I'm assuming that's where they will introduce new variances into the reality, scripted scenarios. It says it's not clear at all what any of these celebrities will have in common besides fame, but it's exactly how reality shows should be. So it's interesting because they're dosing fiction in there, which you can almost say, like, people getting voted off the island and things like that. There's always been a fictional element, but usually they're competing of some sort. But this, they're actually pretending like they're on Mars living. Thought that was kind of weird. Would you live on
Well,
Mars with Lance Armstrong, Doug?
I think we are not in the same mindset.
It might
That's the
make
only
good.
thing I can
It
say.
might make really good
I mean, I
reality
would be
TV.
a very good custodian or something.
Custodian, just mopping up the
I'll just
Mars.
hang out where all the oxygen's at and just you go out on your little missions.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be
So
interesting to see how
it will
cheesy
be.
it is or is not. So, all right, man, you take the next one.
I'll finish that up with I want to see a challenge of tribbles.
No,
If William Shatner's in Mission Control, and for those who don't know, this is a shout out to the original Star Trek. Trouble with Tribbles.
I'll put a
They need
picture
to
up.
have that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Tribbles. Yeah, I
Okay.
remember that.
Yeah, the next thing is Dune 2 trailer. Have you seen the first Dune, the new one, not the 80s
Yep,
version
I
yet?
did. It was really good. I enjoyed it.
I thought they did a really good job.
Yep, they did. It was very well done. It won a lot of awards for spaceship design, special effects, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
They did a great job. I dare say I saw this, and it's more of a teaser to me. It doesn't really show you much about
It
the
doesn't,
story,
yeah.
but it is exciting that they're doing that. The shows are really well done, and if you ever saw the '80s ones, the novels are held in high regard. There's a lot of houses. It's a lot of deep, rich stories. Hard to do, but I think they've done a really good job being effective with it. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see that.
Yeah, if I remember right, the problem with the '80s one everybody talked about, and I've tried to watch them, I just can't get into it for some reason, but they tried to put like 3, 4, how many ever books into one
Yeah,
movie,
it's
and
too
that's
much.
just so much information for you to collect.
Yeah, most people
So
I know
s
that like the '80s, it's because they love the books.
yeah,
So yeah. All right, we got one more left. Oh man, we got a lot of news. So
yeah.
this is interesting. This is about Google making an announcement where they're going passwordless, where you no longer need a password to sign into your Google account. Now, it's important to note that this has been an ongoing trend for some time. Their passwordless feature has launched. You can voluntarily go into it. What it does is it uses what's called passkeys. It's essentially, think of it like an encrypted key on known devices. So you no longer have to put in your password. Instead, it already knows that this device, this phone, or this computer, or this Chromebook, or this tablet belongs to you because you register it. And then essentially, you just have to prove that it's you, usually with a biometrics, whether it's your thumbprint or your face. Or if you don't want to do biometrics, you can also put in a PIN number. This is considered to be far more safer in the cybersecurity realms when compared to passwords. And the idea is because passwords can be guessed, they can be broken, they can be weak. Passwords
Mm.
can you get password fatigue because a lot of organizations will even have employees reset their password, once every other month, once every 90 days, and it just gets old. This is supposed to be a lot more secure. So they're one of the first ones to really go into this. Microsoft and Apple have been pushing it for some time. It'll be interesting because in your work life, you may see it catch on at some point. But with Google doing this, especially them being such a major player in the email account space, and of course, Google Drive, Android, that's a big part of it.
Mm.
This is really going to kind of push encryption keys forward and kind of push out passwords. So personally, I think it's a good thing. I think I don't know. To me, I think hands down, I'm all for it. I'm glad they're doing it. I don't know if you've enabled this yet or not. I haven't enabled it on any of my Google stuff, but I plan to.
I have not. That excites me because I have a Google password list that my cars and my house and my health insurance,
Oh,
life
I know.
insurance. There's
Same.
so many passwords for so many websites. So if they could get me down to just, oh, you recognize my device,
Yep.
or these authentication apps. I have one for Google that does my Discord and some other things.
Yep. Well,
Ju-
that's your two factor. This will replace that as well, at least
Yeah,
for your Google Suite stuff, for like your Gmail and all that. So it actually will not only go passwordless, you don't have to go out two factor anymore. So it's really cool.
yeah, that'd be really good.
All right, man. Woo! It's a lot of news, man. It's
Man,
like 40
we
minutes of
covered all
news.
kinds of stuff.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Hopefully people didn't fall asleep on that one. So let's dive into our topic. It's not an expansive one, but it is an important one. It's really about selling secondhand technology.
Mm,
What are some of the tips and best things to do? I will share with you very briefly about why we're having this topic is that a few months ago, I had a very, very bad experience selling on eBay. I have a lot of technology in my house, a lot of computers. It's what I do for a career. And I was like, why don't we get rid of some of this stuff? So I sold a variety of things. I thought, oh yeah, eBay's the way to go, right?
yeah.
It was horrible. The long and short of it was I was selling two MacBooks. One was like a MacBook Air. They were older. MacBook Pro, had an iPad I sold. I was selling a processor, and I also sold a video card. I will tell you what, I think out of all five of those things, only one thing was a successful sell, and that was,
Mm,
believe it or not, the video card. Um, I had this situation, and the thing about eBay that I learned is that, and it's been a long time since I've sold stuff. I've bought stuff on eBay, but it's been a long time. Their policies are the customer's always right. Now that's cool, but when
yes.
you're a seller, it sucks. So what happened to me? I sent the computer. Now I was very transparent because of what I do. I don't hide anything. Like, look, all of these are functional. They have operating systems on it. I even listed like what the limit of operating system you can put on it. I was very transparent. I get a message and they're like, "Hey, yeah, I can't get Mac OS, such and such on there." And I replied back to them, "Well, yeah, I can't do that because it's a 2013 model, as
Yeah.
stated in the description." Well, they threw a fit about it, and we went back and forth, and finally they demanded a refund, which I had to give them. Didn't have a choice. They sent it back to me. When they got it back, they had wiped it, like it was inoperable.
Yeah.
And I filed the thing that you do with, you can go back and try to ask for them, to, hey, I don't agree with this finding. You can refute it, but they hardly ever side with the seller. So that happened. Then I had another one where the device had arrived at a location. It was signed for and everything, but the person claimed they didn't get it.
Mm,
And now I'm out the device and it had gotten signed for. Here I go again. This is the same thing.
yeah.
On the processor worked perfect. It was out of my son's gaming machine. It was in impeccable shape. It was an AMD Ryzen 5 processor when we first built his machine. Perfect working order. The guy messaged me, "This processor's bad. It's not working." Well, I'm 100% sure he put it in his computer, probably not knowing what he's doing, and he burned it up.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I had to give him his money back, and he sent it back to me, and I tested it. Sure enough, it was toast. And it was in perfect functional condition before it
Yeah.
left. those were my terrible experiences. And at this point, I've swore off selling anything
Yeah.
on eBay. So that kind of gets back into the topic at hand. What are the best ways of selling? So what do you do, Doug? I mean, I know you're into tech. You have stuff that you sell. Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on? First of all, have you sold on eBay? Let's start there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on eBay? Start there, and then tell me about alternatives from your opinion.
Yeah, I've used eBay a lot, and as people have learned from me listening to this podcast, I love phones and I love technology and anything mobile. So I have sold all of my old phones, all of my old tablets, and some gaming stuff. Um, but yeah, I find that the seller has little protection against the purchaser. The purchaser is always right; they're never wrong. So an example of that, this didn't happen to me, but one of my good friends sold some baseball tickets. Well, they said that they never received them, but when he called after the dispute, someone had used those baseball tickets, and
Convenient.
he still had to give them the money back.
Yeah.
And I mean, these were a conference game for
Mm,
baseball or a postseason game.
yeah.
So I mean, they weren't cheap.
Hmm.
So stuff like that, it's definitely in the purchaser's hands, not the seller's hand,
A lot of
to make a
scammers.
profit.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's wide open that if somebody wants to go out there and just run a mech or swap. I've had that scenario where not for me personally, but I was looking it up and people complain that somebody will buy a computer, they'll swap it with a like model that's broken,
Hmm.
and even when the serial numbers don't match, eBay still
Yeah.
sides. It's
See, and
so
that's not right.
it's ridiculous. So I personally I've stopped selling. I can see why I hear a lot. I'm not on Facebook, but I know Facebook Marketplace, which is more, I believe, correct me, you are on Facebook. It's more regional, right? It's more like a Craigslisty kind of a thing. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so you'll have Facebook Marketplace, but I think it's kind of geo-located. Hey, this person's in
So many
Central
miles.
Missouri
Hmm.
or Central Illinois, whatever. There's also groups. So, like, say, local this county, local this town, swap shop and stuff.
Okay.
I've had some really good luck, but also people are posting so much stuff
So it's
that,
hard to be noticed.
uh, yeah. So you're in the feed and it just 10 people post after you and it works its way down the feed. And now people don't scroll that far.
Yeah. Well, the
I
benefit
mean,
though,
maybe not.
are there any fees with it or
No,
is
no
okay?
fees at all. Yeah.
That's kind of nice.
Now
But
each
the trade off
yeah.
is you don't get attention. Yeah.
No. I think each little person, because a person has to host these community swap shops, they'll make their own rules. So
Okay, I see. So that's a trade-off. You still have good old-fashioned Craigslist, but haven't been on it in years. But last I read, Craigslist is kind of a cesspool of some weird postings. You have to
yeah.
navigate all the weirdos selling, weird stuff. So
So
that's kind
one
of a downside.
success for me on Craigslist, I have to say, is my father passed away a couple years ago. We sold his vehicle. He, unknown to me, had some crazy unlimited Jeep Wrangler.
Hmm.
We sold it in less than 15 minutes
Oh wow! So
to a auto dealership in Texas. So I
through
have a success.
Craigslist?
Yeah,
Wow,
I have a success story for Craigslist at
that's really
least. Yeah,
cool. That's
yeah.
really cool. That's awesome. Um, I haven't done Craigslist in a long time. Actually, I had positive experiences both buying and selling on Craigslist a few times. Did some comic book stuff, selling some comic books, buying some comic books. I had really good luck with that. Like I said, you just got when you go searching for listings, there's some weird stuff out there. You just got to navigate around.
Oh
But
yeah,
I had pretty good luck, and they also make it relatively regional, unless you go into more of the national list that they have. I did look up and now fair disclaimer, as you all know, we don't have sponsorships. We're not that big of a
yeah.
podcast yet.
No,
So I'm not advocating for these. I have not used them. I just want to make that clear. But there are two that were featured in a CNET article for 2023. And it wasn't just mainly it was for tech stuff, but you could sell almost anything. One was called Declutter. I'll make sure I put this in the show notes. And the other is called Back Market, not black market, not illegal, but
okay,
back market. And those look like pretty good alternatives.
yeah,
Other than that, I know a lot of people have at their works, professional workplaces, they have bulletin boards, private bulletin boards. My wife has had amazing luck getting rid of stuff or even at times purchasing stuff through and all it is an email listserv just
hmm
with people at her work, and it's really gone very very well. at other companies I've worked at, they also have like an electronic bulletin board where you can post things, put together your own flyer.
Oh,
And that's kind of cool because there's a little bit of intrinsic trust there. It's not so much of a stranger. So, what are your thoughts on the alternatives there?
yeah, they sound great. I am not familiar with Declutter and Back Market, but they sound good. I'm sure there's maybe some fees associated with it just so they can run their website and stuff.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
sure so. Again, we're not advocating, but they were
no, yeah,
cited in the CNET top list. I'm pretty sure CNET, being a large organization, would not have cited them unless they were
reputable
substantial.
at least. Oh, yeah,
Exactly, because CNET's got a pretty good brand to them. So those are some options there. If you have any other thoughts, feel free to put it in the comments on your preference of platform for listening, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or you can even head to our website, send a message from there. So we've got one last topic that we had to slip in because, and I think you had added it originally some time ago, and I found the article. I'm going to make sure I put the video up. Why don't you set this one up for us? What is this? It's related to robotics,
yes.
and I found the article initially, and like I said, I'm gonna snag the video because it is something to see. It kind of looks like stop motion though to me, but I think it's just because of the way they put it on the website. And I did find a full motion one that I'll try to get in there. But set us up. What is this topic that we just had to mention to everybody because it's so fascinating and it's creepy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to explain it myself, but their little header at the top of the story is just the best. So, scientists have developed a shape shifting humanoid robot that can liquefy and reform itself. The robot was created by a team at University of California, Berkeley. So, you're looking at this video. To me, it looks like a little Lego character,
It does. It's like in a
but
mold of a Lego character behind
yeah,
bars.
yeah.
Yeah.
He melts or liquefies and goes through the like what looks like cell bars or jail bars.
Doug, just say it, man. It's the T1000
Yes.
from Terminator
I
2.
didn't want to say it because with the AI we talked about earlier,
I know it
people
may.
are leaving the tech industry. Now we have shape shifting
We
Lego.
got liquid robots. No, it
Oh my.
says it's using a metal. It even sounds sci-fi. Listen to this. The robots are made of a type of metal called ferrofluid. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And
Yeah.
Doug's right. It looks like the T1000 when
It's
it
scary.
melts and goes through the bars and it can semi reassemble.
Yeah.
It's so crazy what's going on in this world.
I mean, the fluid that you're talking about, this could be, I think, used for really good purposes. But joining it with AI and joining it with weapons seems very scary to me.
Oh,
T1000 indeed.
you throw it into AI. I know it says that the this ferrofluid, it's a bunch of tiny magnetic particles. When magnetic field is applied to it, the particles align and can cause the liquid to take on a specific shape. By controlling the strength and direction of the magnetic field, the researchers were able to make the robot move and change shape. The team was also able to make the robot walk, crawl, and even climb a wall. They
Not
also
good.
showcased in their white paper that it can reform itself into different shapes, such as a ball or a snake. One of the key
Yeah.
advantages of this technology is the ability to adapt to different environments. The robot can change its shape to fit through narrow openings or grip different objects. Additionally, the robot is able to recover from damage by reforming its shape. Have they learned nothing from James? Did somebody
Right.
call James Cameron and ask him about this?
Yes. I mean, the thing you just described seems just like the plot to
You can't
Terminator
you
2.
can't kill it unless you
No,
have some liquid nitrogen. We did learn that. Thank you,
absolutely.
Arnold.
Yes.
Choo, 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 choo.
So we've already talked about ferrofluid shaping swords, Terminator,
Oh my gosh.
passing through bars, Terminator,
Yep. Can't
getting holes blown in it, Terminator.
damage
Yeah,
resistant
yeah,
Terminator. So now all we're missing is time travel and John Connor, and
yeah,
we're working on Skynet, right?
yeah.
We got Skynet in the bag, Cyberdyne Systems. So yeah, man, we're just I don't
Not
think the
good.
movie was supposed to be, a blueprint
A premonition to the future. Yeah, yeah.
of all the sci-fi movies. That's the one they picked. They couldn't pick something cool
Mm,
like Star Trek where everybody's
right.
prosperous.
Absolutely.
Or I take Star Wars, even though it's always in galactic turmoil with the whole empire. I'd even
Yeah.
take that over whatever this is.
So if your name's John Connor, send us an email,
I
like
know.
us and subscribe,
If you're a
and
little kid, I know all that was
yeah,
supposed to take place in like 98 or something, but oh my gosh,
ooh, yeah,
it is nuts what's going on. And at any point, I'm imagining, even if their students are sitting around and they're just like, is this a good idea? Not
right,
one person,
right,
but what's funny is how do we know, especially if they're students? And I know I'm going to sound like an old man here, Doug. What if they're younger generation? They don't know about Terminator. We just
oh,
assume, but I've listened to other podcasts and people that are a little younger than me, they don't seem to know a lot of cultural references sometimes.
yeah,
Now I'm old, and so I'm also into that, but I've listened to some podcasts and it kind of blows my mind with what these people don't know or what movies they haven't seen, or they market themselves as being, oh, we're a podcast about, this or that. And then they get to talking, and you're like, wow, these kids or this kid they've never played this game, or they've
yeah,
even heard of this game. They don't even know about this movie, or like, oh yeah, I got to write that down. I've never seen Indiana Jones, and you're like,
yes,
what?
it's
So maybe it could be, if it's a bunch of students doing this stuff, they've never seen Terminator. Maybe we should just send them
there
a
needs to be
copy
a
of it.
history lesson.
Yeah. Doug walks in. We're going to have a talk. Professor Doug here. This is the
This is
T1000.
yes, this
Bad.
is what we will not make.
Oh, the
Oh man,
T100 alone. I mean, shoot, you've got Tesla
absolutely,
working on that.
yeah. Well, Boston
Boston
Dynamics.
Dynamics.
Yes, we've talked about this. Oh my
When
gosh.
it's doing parkour.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Hey, what we did
Uh-oh.
have on the list, I would love to see the liquid metal robot fight the Boston Dynamic robot.
Oh,
That'd be kind of
yes.
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
We will make that happen. We'll get Don King, the
Oh, there you go. Is Don
fight
King even
coordinator.
alive? I don't even know if he's still
Uh,
alive as a
he
promoter.
may not be. We'll edit that out. That's fine.
Now we'll leave it
Okay.
in. Speaking of not knowing,
Okay.
well, that rounds us out for this episode. Some highly interesting topics this week,
Yes.
but this is fun, man. This is awesome. You had some good grabs there between the news and everything, so looking forward to what we have coming ahead. That wraps up our episode number 14. We want to thank everybody for joining us. Don't forget to head out to our website. Don't forget to make sure that you check out our merch store if you want some really cool Wired Nerdy merch.
Absolutely.
Doug, man, take us home, man. Wrap us up for this episode 14. What are your thoughts?
Yep. Just two friends having fun. Like, subscribe, help us pay the bills, help us keep doing this, bringing the Wired nerdy news to you, bring
It's a
our
mouthful.
differing views, and bring the information for the future. Stop the robot apocalypse.
and be very, very nice to your Alexa, your Google Home
Absolutely.
Pods, because if you're mean, they're going to band together, and you
Yeah.
you want to be one of the ones, for our overlords that they keep, because you're nice.
That
Maybe.
makes me laugh real quick because I tell my Alexa, thank you all the time.
I
My
just,
wife
I'm
laughs at
like,
me.
no.
And I'm like, lady, in about 15, 20 years, you're going to thank me when Alexa doesn't get us.
My wife is
So,
so polite to the Alexa, and
absolutely.
yeah, she's very big on, we got to be nice to them, and so, and I appreciate that, especially seeing how things are shaping up
Yes,
because
definitely.
it ain't looking good. So
I'm building some digital brownie points with my
there
robot
you go.
overlords.
There
There
you
you go.
go. The liquid
So,
metal, the liquid metal robot's gonna like
please
you,
don't
Doug.
hurt me. Yeah.
Especially since you can't damage it.
Right.
All right, everybody, you have an awesome week.
Yep.
Take care of
See
yourself.
y'all.
Stay nerdy.